Well, we were talking about the news conference yesterday, and in a rare one it was. There's not many times where you come away kind of feeling like, wow, the Bears not only spent a lot of money, not only brought in the hottest candidate, but the guy was very impressive without so much as a note card to look down at. He answered a lot of things extemporaneously, and his message was excellent.
Yeah, I thought he was really well prepared for the moment, and you're right. Without any note cards, I don't think anybody walked away from that saying, "Hey, this guy's gotten some coaching to do this." I think what you saw is what you get with Ben Johnson now. Is it going to lead to wins? The Bears certainly hope so. He's interesting. He's climbed the ranks. He pointed out, he's like, listen, I'm not a former player that was able to fast track through the coaching business because of that. I don't have a last name that got me a job, that no nepotism involved. So he climbed his way up from the bottom and believes that after being a very hot candidate a year ago, after being in a position 2 years ago where he likely could have gotten a head coaching opportunity, feels like he's ready now, and he's here to lead the Bears.
Brad, after weeks and maybe even months of conversation or rhetoric about what needed to happen or how Ben Johnson, the job candidate, needed to have alignment with the front office, you see Vegas had cleared the decks. There was no general manager in place. Now you see Jacksonville fired Trent Baalke. And in Chicago, obviously, there's a presence of Ryan Poles. Ben Johnson came here anyway. What's your best understanding after hearing him yesterday, why the Bears made sense for him at this time in his career?
Well, I think, he talked about having people he trusts perform homework. Like, this wasn't something where the terrific regular season ended for Detroit and he spent a day and a half prepping for interviews with various teams and then kind of went from there. Like, he was probably digging into these situations as much as the Bears were looking into the candidates, and maybe he wasn't doing all the work himself, but he had people he trusted, and guys, he's been in the league a long time. 7 years in Miami, another 6 in Detroit. Like, you get to know people, so you hear things. So I think he's very comfortable with where things are at right now. And George McCaskey and Kevin Warren's sort of faith that Ryan Poles' position wouldn't be a hindrance at all to the team in the process proved justified in the end. And yeah, the Jacksonville thing, like, really, you're gonna go more than 2 weeks before you fire your GM? The Raiders did it. 4 days after the season ended. I mean, but that's the kind of company the Bears have been keeping with the consistent brand of losing football that they've been playing, and it's easy to kind of turn your nose up at them. But record-wise, you throw the Jets, Cleveland, a couple of these other teams in there, and that's the zip code they're in right now, and they're very hopeful that Ben Johnson's going to lead them out of that.
So obviously, he's got to put a staff together. There's a lot of immediate things that have to be done. Obviously, you had a thing saying Hank Fraley not coming here. Does that mean he's going to Seattle, or does that mean that he may remain in Detroit, given all the people leaving?
As best I can tell, he's not going to be coming to the Bears. There's most places sort of a code, an unwritten rule. If you get a head coaching opportunity elsewhere, you're not going to try to fill the moving vans with people that are in the building. Like, you talk to folks in Kansas City, and Andy Reid point blank tells that to coaches working for him. Like, I will help you to advance your career. If you get the opportunity to become a head coach,
yeah,
you're not taking a single person with you. and so is that a message that Dan Campbell explicitly shared in Detroit? I have no idea. I would tend to doubt it. But there's a code, right? And you don't. And he talked about his appreciation for Dan Campbell and what Dan Campbell has meant to his career and their relationship. You're not going to turn around and take the guy's O-line coach as a thank you on the way out of town.
So, Brad, yesterday, a lot of lofty rhetoric, a lot of enthusiasm. Mully and I have been talking about it since we got here this morning about how impressed we were and how impressive Ben Johnson was. Now, reality check. You're the good guy for that. You're the resident buzzkill. So when you look at next year and Ben Johnson talks about being playoff caliber in 2025, like, there's no rebuild in the NFL, and this roster is better than people think that it is and better than maybe 5-12 suggests. What do you think of that assessment, and how possible is that for the Bears?
Well, he likes the roster, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, knowing that he's gone up against it, right? So he's prepared for that defense, and you see what's called crossover tape, when he's prepping for
right.
Minnesota or Green Bay or other opponents, where he'll get a little bit of a look at the offense. They kind of sets up like a challenging schedule, or at least list of opponents. You don't know how it's gonna lay out, but they've got to play the AFC North, and that's not going to be a picnic, as you guys know. I'm interested in seeing what moves they make. We've just, fans have got to stop celebrating the off-season trophies that the Bears accumulate, right? Because
winning the off-season doesn't mean you win in season. Yeah, it's correct.
Right, and they'll tell you how much cap space they have and how Ryan Poles can kill it again. And Poles, there was that King Poles thing where everyone would share on social media that Poles wearing like a crown on his head, right? And then everybody wanted to fire him, and we're mere weeks away from him being anointed as a king again, because he'll make some bold moves. And free agency, they got to change the culture there. That's one of the reasons they needed a new head coach, and I don't think you can change the culture in the course of an off-season program and training camp. Like, you can lay the foundation. I think that's going to take some time. Can they be more competitive than they were in 2024? You'd hope so, but in terms of predictions, I'm not your guy for that this morning.
Yeah, that's good. That was a nice cup of cold water splashed upon us. Let's talk about Caleb. The fact that he came in, he flew in from wherever he was, Florida, New Orleans. He'd been hanging around with Ashton Genty. But I'm curious, the relationship between the two of them, the fact that he talked about the only way that you're going to create it is by having, and I love that. I thought it was a really well said idea that the quarterback needs to know the play caller's mind, that you need to understand what he's seeing and why he's calling what he's calling. And he basically said they're going to go through tape and they're just going to chat about it and talk it through. And that's the only way to do it. is he up for that? Does that mean Caleb gets no off season? I mean, listen, I think Caleb pushes himself and wants to be great, but that's what you're talking
and
about.
what does the CBA allow?
Well, that's another good question.
CBA is going to allow. That's going to allow Ben Johnson to begin working with Caleb Williams in April, like when they can start 2 weeks before teams that don't have a new head coach. So you're looking probably the first week of April they'll be able to get going. They won't be able to do anything before then. They could have some casual conversations, but that's about it. He can't be coaching up his quarterback this month or next month or in March, and he's got a lot of stuff to do before I think you get to that point. But yeah, I think they seem really invested in the idea of forming a partnership here. They're going to need to, and we'll see where that goes because we've talked. Caleb's got to be better this year, right? Like that, he's going to have to make a big step forward if they want to be a perennial contender. Like the level of play that he was at this past season isn't gonna do that for him, and they're gonna have to be better around him and support him better as well.
So Ben Johnson, when asked about alignment with Ryan Poles, said to talk to the powers that be. Kevin Warren essentially was intentionally vague and talked about working with Ryan Poles for years to come, and nobody's going to give you the length of the contract or if it was extended at all. What is your best sense, Brad, when you hear Ben Johnson talking about being in philosophical lockstep with Ryan Poles, looking forward to working together? Ryan Poles, I know a year is a lifetime, but does he have longer than that, do you think, contractually to be the general manager of the Bears?
I believe contractually he's got longer than that. I believe he's got through the end of the 2026 season. I don't think that anything's happened real recently with that either. I think it's been that way for at least a substantial period of time.
So wait a minute. Are you saying that we've been misinformed about the length of his original contract?
I haven't done any informing on it.
No, but I'm asking if you believe. Everyone was under the impression that he had a year left
because a year is a lifetime.
It was yes.
Yeah, no, a year is a lifetime according to Kevin Warren. But
yes.
You could say a lot of things would not make sense. Okay, and there are people who thought the Bears should have swapped out GMs.
Yes.
When Matt Eberflus was fired.
Right.
Okay. And you can make a case for that. You can look at it, you can line up facts and look at the record and the history and this and that and say, okay, here's why you should go do it. You could say, keep him. A lot of GMs get 2 shots at hiring a head coach, et cetera. There's a bunch of different lanes you could pick. The craziest lane you could pick, guys, the absolute craziest thing you could do is have a GM with 12 months on his contract be in charge of hiring a head coach and then be in charge of doing whatever you got going on in terms of roster construction, free agency, the draft, et cetera. That would be more nutty than anything else you could say. Whether you're for him being fired, for him being retained, or whatever. The craziest would be to have a guy with 12 months on his contract making those decisions. Because if that's the case,
right.
You are blowing it out for 20. It is 20,
totally
25
understand.
or bust.
I understand what you're saying, but my question is, have we been operating under a misapprehension? Did he get an extension of a year, or had he always had the amount of time that you're discussing right now?
I don't know if he started with 4.
We don't know.
Or started with 5.
Well, I think
I don't know.
He started with 4. We don't know if they gave him an extra year somewhere along the line.
I believe he's through the end of 2026.
Okay. Well, that's
And
different.
I'm,
That's good. No,
yeah,
it's
and
good information.
I'm relatively confident on that.
Okay.
But that's requiring some,
Well, he got
reading
smarter
between
the
lines
moment they hired Ben Johnson. I'll say that. I don't
mean,
think he did enough to keep
you
his
guys
job.
You might not think he did enough to keep his job, but apparently Ben Johnson did. Like, Trent Baalke was fired because Liam Cohen pulled out, and that's three guys that didn't want to work with him, right? And that was the conclusion that Khan made, having seen that go down.
Shad Khan's like a super bright guy.
Yes, he is.
I've heard him speak. Like, he comes across as, okay, yeah, I could see this guy, why he's an NFL owner. Like, why he's made some of the decisions there.
Right.
And although, right now, seriously, maybe a pretty good place to go, because that guy shows patience with people that he employs. But yeah, crazy on that end.
But I'm saying that didn't happen with Ryan Poles. Like, if Ben Johnson was like, okay, I'll take your $13 million, but you got to get rid of the guy, then I'd be all for it. But it didn't happen.
Well, there could be a variety of reasons there too. I mean, the fact that he wanted to be in Chicago, or maybe the fact that he wanted to come to a place where there is a GM he can work with, but he also knows he's been weakened. So your word is going to be the loudest one in the room.
By having, and I don't know what Poles is making, but by having 2 or 3 times the amount of money he does from the organization, he's the one with the long-term.
Yeah, he's got the clout.
And yeah, he certainly does. But there's also a lot of coaches that just have no interest in, like, I don't need to say, like, I got plenty to do here. Yes. I want to have some input. I want to make sure we're kind of seeing things the same way. And then when there are moments that we don't, we can figure it out. And then if you develop a working history with someone, your vision's probably going to become a little more aligned as you learn one another. But, coaches that have all the juice or that, boy, you put a target on your back.
That's true, but there's got to be something about Ryan Poles in the shared past, whether it's at Boston College or somewhere along the way. Find that guy, Brad. Find that guy who vouched for Ryan Poles to Ben Johnson, because I want to know what Ben Johnson felt comfortable enough with, because they both referenced Boston College. They worked at the same cubicle 1 year apart. There's got to be somebody that connected the two somewhere along the line.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, though. I mean, that was a long time ago. I think they probably know way more people that they have in common than we could ever guess, just because they've been in the league for so long. And you travel, you talk to people. Yeah, so the degrees of separation from a QC to a college scouting director, it's not that far. And then he was a tight ends coach, wide receivers coach. So you have people in common, and so you get scouting reports on them. And we'll see. This is going to be interesting, because the coach believes they've got the talent to be successful sooner rather than later. I think Poles feels like they've got a foundation there, and we got to see what they do. It'll probably take 2-3 weeks to completely finalize the coaching staff, and then Ben Johnson can get up to speed with having input on decisions in terms of free agency and what they want to do with guys on their roster.